Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you had a good lunch. My name is Gary Thompson, and I'm in the risk management section of Emergency Management. Unfortunately, Mike Springberry, who is our director of emergency management, what I'm going to talk about today is unmanned aircraft vehicles. A lot of times we hear the word drone a lot, but I'll show you, again, this slide, you'll see that the FAA prefers that you use other acronyms. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the rules and regulations that the FAA requires for you to legally fly a UAV, and also the North Carolina especially for state agencies and local governments, there are some regulations we have to go through to be able to get approved to fly them. So, anytime as I'm going through, if you have questions, just stop. It's very informal. We'll show you some examples of the use of unmanned aircraft systems. So, again, a lot of times in the paper you'll hear they always write, they use a drone to do this, they'll drone do that. So the FAA prefers these acronyms, UAV being the actual aircraft, either being a fixed wing or multi-rotor aircraft. And we'll talk about some of the applications that you can do with fixed wing, maybe a little better than you can with multi-rotor, especially for accurate air photography. You want photography that you're going to use maybe as a court case or something where you want accurate, precise measurements. Then a fixed wing aircraft is probably more suited for that in most cases. UAS is the whole system. So we'll show you some slides of aircraft, UAVs, controllers. Some have launch ramps, some that are launch from multi-rotors. Some you can do autonomous, where you plan the flights, others you control. In some cases where you're doing, say, inspections, like you're going into infrastructure inspection, more likely that would be manual control. But where you want to fly for air photography, where you need kind of precise flight paths, using one that has autonomous control is the best method. So, just an example, at Emergency Management, we have started some training. I have Kurt Johnson back in the back. Kurt has gone through training. We're using a Trimble aircraft, so no endorsement of that. We're just using this as an example. The rest of the aircraft that we're familiar with. Kurt has gone through the week training, taking the test, he's certified to utilize the aircraft. This is a typical fixed wing aircraft. You can see all the components of it. In this case, this UAV has a launch that you prepare, good for processing it, launches. You can see the propeller at the back. 3, 4, and 5 is where your sensors are. Keep in mind these UAVs anywhere from 5 to 65 pounds, so your payload has to be, in most cases, small because of the weight. They don't lift so much. Get up to some that cost maybe $100,000 or bigger, they can carry bigger payloads. But in most kind of cases, you don't have a camera or like a GoPro or something like that. Some have gimbals on them, so especially the multi-rotor crafts has a gimbal, so you can, if you're doing video, you can turn the camera around and look. This one here is mainly designed for photography, so that you can then use that to develop a photogrammetry. In other words, you can get accurate, like a manned fixed wing, but over a smaller area. So the sensors go in there, the battery. Flight time depends on the amount of power, how big the payload is. Anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour. Also depending on the wind. One of the requirements of the FAA is that you have to be line of sight. Wherever you fly this aircraft, either the pilot or your ground person with them has to be inside that. So you can't go behind the line of sight. Sensors, we had somebody at North Carolina A&T State University went to a convention or a conference a couple weeks ago. We had all the manufacturers there. And there was more sensor sales vendors than there were aircraft. So there's all kinds of sensors being developed that you can put on these today, because one of the big markets is agriculture. You're going to see a lot of use in agriculture, for especially larger farms. You can fly over with different sensors, even just a camera with infrared to monitor the crops, see where there's damage at, see there's too much water. And then 7 and 8 are servos, so that you have your control of your aircraft, turning, landing, and then the servos. So all that components, and most of the time the main components here, 3, 4, 5 is where your payload is. Most of these fixed wings just have no landing wheels, they just land on the ground, so they have a life cycle that the body has to be replaced. Especially if you do a lot of landings on concrete or asphalt. So, because you utilize these, you keep that in mind, there is a maintenance cost that you have to, over so many landings, you have to replace part of the body. So underneath it, you look at this aircraft and see where the lens is. You know, when you get into accuracy as far as photogrammetry, these cameras are what we call non-metric cameras. When you fly with a manned aircraft with $1 million cameras to do photogrammetry, those cameras are metric, where they have very precise measurements of the objects, which are needed to obtain photogrammetry. These are your typical Nikon cameras, so they're usually non-metric, which means to get accurate imagery, you have to have surveyed ground control points. And I'll show you an example of that as we go through the presentation. See the propellers. So, pretty typical of a fixed wing. Only difference between it, a fixed wing and a multi-rotor craft is it's more flexible as far as flying in defined areas. This one's more suited for just flying back and forth over a certain area. For this unit, this is the ground control station. And you can see in the control there where the pre-flight area has already been defined. So in this case, we define where we want to fly, launch the aircraft, it flies a predetermined route, and it comes back to a landing area that's predetermined also. Most of these have built-in safety features so that if they lose contact, they'll either stay in one place in the sky or they'll return to a predetermined point and safely land. So there's a lot of safety built into it. Main thing the FAA is very concerned with is safety. There's a lot of where you can't fly. One area is you cannot fly within 5 miles of an airport. And it's safety issues. Emergency management, we're concerned, especially in the case of an emergency, where airspace is being used by rescue aircraft. Make sure that if there is a UAV in that airspace, that the manned aircraft are aware where that's being flown, so that we don't have an accident or problem in that area. So this control unit, as you can see, a lot of activities, a lot of communication going on between the aircraft. So the pilot that's running the aircraft can see the status, see if there's any problem with it. If there is, can safely land it and return the aircraft to the ground. So this is, as Kurt went through the training, these are some of the things that the training provides you with to make sure that you operate with safety. You can see in this case it has both a pilot and an observer to make sure that that aircraft is kept within line of sight the whole time that the aircraft is in the air. And you can see with this controller, a lot of information is provided as far as what the aircraft is doing. As far as wind speeds, the vendors will tell you, get different information about what type of wind speed that you're flying in. But keep in mind, you're flying something that's 50, 55 pounds, it's going to be affected by wing currents. It's not going to fly perfectly level in a straight line. It will move around. I'll show you an example of that in a few minutes. So as far as takeoff and landing, it's one of the critical things. You have to make sure that you have a safe area to take off and land, make sure there's no obstructions. And we'll talk about in the North Carolina legislation, you have to take off and land on state property, you have to have permission. Also on private properties, you have to be very aware of where you're going to take off and land. Make sure there's no obstructions, especially the ones that you launch by hand. You want to make sure that you can safely launch that without hitting another person or just hitting something that would damage the aircraft or yourself when you're getting back and before you get it. So you can see in the training, some of the parameters here, the safety angle that this manufacturer recommends as far as takeoff. As far as landing, again, with the sensors with UAVs that are pre-planned, don't have a predetermined flight path that comes in and lands. This is an example where you have a linear landing. It comes in more of a straight landing thing, slope. And you can see you want to make sure that you have no obstructions. This provides a more abrupt landing, so you're going to have a little bit more stress on the aircraft. This landing here is more suited for hard landing surfaces, so you can see it will not be as much stress on the aircraft. So utilizing these, all these things you have to pre-plan before you take off and land. Multi-rotor craft, you don't need as big a landing area, big a takeoff area. Again, you still need to be clear of obstructions before you take off and land. So, North Carolina Emergency Management is in the process of getting approval to start flying, and we're working with a group over at NC State called Next Gen Air Transport, and they are the lead agency in North Carolina that has been flying UAVs. At the present time, we're the only governmental agency I'm aware of in North Carolina that has permission from the FAA. In the last few weeks, someone else may have received that. They've been doing a lot of test flights here in North Carolina. They have about 8 test facilities they're flying at. So we've been partnering with them to obtain knowledge and skills so that emergency management can move forward and get approved from the FAA to do that. So if you have questions about UAVs, the process, Kyle Snyder is the director of this agency, and Kyle can provide you information, provide you guidance to help state agencies and local governments go through the process of getting trained and approved to fly UAVs here in North Carolina. So just recently, the FAA was looking for partners or groups to kind of lead the country move forward UAVs, and it's called the Surety. And FAA picked the team that NCLGISA is on, which is led by Mississippi State University. And so that's very high honor here for that group here in North Carolina. Which means here in North Carolina we'll have a lot of access to all the things that's going on with that team. And you can see that the role that NCLGISA is going to be is with command and control communications. That's going to kind of be their lead area. We've been working with them to set up a test facility or a test area over NC State off Lake Wheeler Road. So we have we've created an area that they can go out and fly. We have predetermined survey points, so when the imagery is collected, we have a baseline we can compare it to. And so we'll be utilizing that as other agencies, other groups will fly different aircraft over that area. So it's a good area to go to learn your skills and to test your aircraft to see what type of imagery and how accurate that imagery is. If that's what you're after. If you're after strictly video, still a good area to test, but if you're after imagery where you can utilize it for measurements or for court cases, then you need to have the process down, procedures, so that you can get accurate, precise information from that imagery. So applications, just unlimited. You got to keep in mind though that there are some limitations to UAVs because of the limitations of how long they can stay up, how far they can fly, and the line of sight. So they're ideal for small area applications. Again, in this list, emergency response at the end of the presentation, I'll go through and show you some of the applications that we know or we really believe will be a big help. Maybe in some cases in conjunction with a manned helicopter or a manned fixed-wing aircraft. Use those together to access and provide help to emergency management. Mapping and aerial photography. One of the departments in our agency is floodplain mapping. And we see an application where we need to map a small area like a bridge, and we need to do more engineering at where a bridge crosses a stream. Then we can go in and use the UAV and fly that small area, collect photogrammetry in conjunction with ground surveys and help. Bigger areas will still keep using the fixed wing aircraft and fly and collect data in larger areas. Homeland security for surveillance or instances where you need to see what's around the building, all kinds of applications in that area. Civil air patrol, search and rescue, again, limited to probably small areas where you can utilize that. And keep in mind, somebody maybe is lost in limited boards or somewhere and you have a small area, then use your UAV to help you. Look to see if you can see that using the video. Ag, like I said, is going to be, I think, one of the bigger users of this, especially as more sensors are developed. Especially the large commercial farms. You can fly every day, use that imagery and do change detection, see what's changed from day to day, just inspect the crops. I was at a show about a month ago, and there was a company there that has a device that's for construction inspection. And they take this device out that looks kind of like a porta john and put it at the construction site. And then you program it how often you want to do inspections. So you do one every hour, the lid opens up, the UAV pops out, flies over the construction area, takes photographs or videos, comes back to goes back in the door, and that information is transmitted to home base. We'll do it once a day. So there's other applications where we remotely can do inspection using a device like that. Forestry, forest fires, bugs, tree bugs, sun-time beetle, all kinds of applications there. Investigations, transportation, so all kinds of potential there. Airport planning is, I see applications there. Again, you've got to be careful. We're flying in the airport. Have to be at special commission at FAA. As far as obstructions, other things, use this device to photograph or to monitor what's going on at the airport. And we've already seen entertainment, where the entertainment industry is already utilizing these to help them construction, to do inspections, what they're building, but also the equipment. If you have a large crane, you want to inspect the crane every day, use a multi-rotor aircraft to fly it, look at all the components of the crane, so all kinds of potential applications. So these are some of the ones as far as emergency response. You know, NC-12, we have a washout of NC-12, and we can only drive so far. We can take a UAV and go out, inspect where we can't get to until maybe have a fixed wing aircraft. So we can do some very quick inspections with that. After a tornado, go in and do a quick assessment, especially if the roads are blocked. There's also some devices that are tethered. So you could, over an area, you could put up a device that's tethered that could also have monitoring equipment or even communication devices that would restore communications to and search and rescue potential. Fire management, forest fires. After a forest fire, you could fly the line to make sure you don't have any fires that are popping up, wire fires going on, see what the conditions are. So a lot of different applications. This one's out west where they use it to monitor control burn, to see what the status of the control burn was. Infrastructure management, so I see a big potential here for the utility companies, power companies. If you want to go in and inspect the type of infrastructure, smokestack, go up, take a look at it, see what's around the smokestack at the top, without sending someone, a person, individual up there to be in danger. You can use this UAV to do that. Pipelines, again, keep in mind the line of sight. So for small areas, it has applications, but for long areas, probably have manned aircraft to do it. So, as I mentioned, one of the applications is we can collect imagery to acquire photogrammetry, use photogrammetry to get orthoimagery. Orthoimagery is imagery that will scale correctly. And to do that, we need overlapping images. With a fixed wing or a helicopter manned aircraft, we have very precise flight paths that we have, in most cases, 30 to 40% overlap. So you can stitch those photographs together and then drape them over the contours of the Earth. The vendors on the UAVs recommend 80% overlap. And so it's very important that that aircraft flies very precise paths. So this is an example where we were working with ENGAC down at Taiping Airport, and they flew imagery so we could see if we could rectify this and come up with orthoimagery. And you can see the flight path. You can see it's not these very straight, precise lines. It's very abrupt changes, which brings a challenge to try to stitch all those photographs together because you don't have that overlap. And so that's one of the challenges you'll have. You have this small aircraft, you have wind, and it's going to buffer it around. And so to be able to get accurate imagery, we have to have ground control space. And so this is the actual imagery here. And so what NCDOT photogrammetry tried to do is to orthorectify it. When we stitch all those pictures together without any outside resource. There was no what we call ground control points that we knew the coordinates of. And they were unsuccessful in doing that. So what they did was they tried to align it, and they used these control points. So we need the coordinates of those points on the ground. If we know those coordinates, then we can kind of make the imagery stretch and make the imagery fit together. And by doing that, they were able to come up with imagery. So if you're going to use a UAV for orthoimagery, you'll need some type of ground control point to control that. Even though the device has a GPS receiver in it, most of the time those GPS receivers are going to be what we call recreational grade. They will not have the accuracy that's needed to rectify that image. Plus, most people, the fixed wing manned aircraft that we're flying for photogrammetry purposes, it also has an IMU in it. And the IMU will determine the pitch, yaw, and roll of the aircraft. As that aircraft is not flying level, if the aircraft turns this way, the imagery will be pointed that way. So, in most cases, the UAVs do not have that IMU. And so, ground control points is what you will need to take that raw product and make it a usable product. So, let's talk about policy. There's two paths you have to go through to be able to legally fly a UAV here in North Carolina, in the United States. FAA is the authority. They have control over airspace. So anywhere you fly in airspace, you have to go through the FAA rules and regulations and make sure you meet those rules and regulations. They do not have control of airspace inside. So you can fly a UAV inside a building. That's not airspace that's controlled by the FAA. So for public agencies to be able to fly a UAV, you have to have a COA, a certificate of authorization. For private companies, at the present time, we need a 333 exemption. So FAA just recently came out with their draft rules and plans. We're probably about 2 years before those are finalized. So in the interim, be able to require access to fly. Public agencies have to get a COA, and private entities have to get a 333 exemption. And you can go to the FAA's webpage, and they'll list everyone that has acquired a COA, and also the private companies that have acquired a 333 exemption. I was on a webinar yesterday, and Michigan State Police have a COA, and they just recently got a statewide COA. Now, a statewide COA doesn't mean they can fly anywhere. There's still restrictions. You cannot fly within 5 miles of an airport. You cannot fly over a populated area, so there's still restrictions even if you have a statewide COA. And the COAs, there's 2 levels. The FAA, if you are inexperienced, then the first COA is a training COA. And then once you acquire that ability, then the next is a full COA that allows you more areas to fly. COA also is aircraft specific. So when you apply for a COA, you have to provide them which aircraft you're going to use, and then it has to go through an airworthiness test. Now, a lot of the aircraft vendors have already gone through that process. So you pick an aircraft that's already gone through the airworthiness certification, then that speeds up the process to get your COA. Now, as far as North Carolina, last year in the appropriation bill, there was UAS legislation included, and the requirements, and we'll go through some of those requirements in more detail. Also, penalties for illegally using UAVs. Some are even felonies. If you interfere with a manned aircraft, that's a felony. So there's different things in the North Carolina law. So the number one for state and local agencies is if you want to use UAV in North Carolina, the North Carolina legislation requires that you get an exemption from the state CIO in order to purchase or fly a UAV. So if you're thinking about utilizing UAV, that's the first step you need to do here in North Carolina, is go to CIO and request an exemption to fly a UAV. Other parts of it, you can see that you launch it from state or private property. You have to get permission. It has a civil penalty of $5,000 per photo. So if you take someone's photo and publish it without their permission, the statute gives them the right to take it to go to court and request $5,000 damage per photo, plus attorney and court costs. And the last two here is is that the Department of Aviation will develop a skills and training test for UAVs, and then also kind of a licensing process. And that's in the present legislation, but there's discussion going on now that may be modified somewhat, where more get a permit from the Department of Aviation. So that's still, in the present law, this is the way it's stated, but there's some legislation introduced this year to maybe modify that some, where it's more, instead of a skill test or a license, it's more of a permit that you have to acquire from the Department of Aviation. And we'll talk about more things that are in the regulations. Public aircraft, because this is considered a public aircraft, you follow the FAA regulations. The agencies that have acquired COAs either have had a pilot or at least someone that has completed the ground school pilot. And as the official rules are modified, that may change some in the future. But at the present time, some type of pilot may be involved if you acquire a COA. The public COA, as I mentioned, when you acquire a COA, it's for a particular aircraft in a particular area. So for the training COA, the first step will be you'll pick an area that you want to fly, and you'll be restricted to that area only. And then as you go up to the next level COA, you can acquire different flight areas. In the case of the Michigan State Police, they got a statewide COA. Begin with some restrictions on where they can fly at. And also for that specific aircraft. So if you apply for a COA, and you apply for one type of aircraft, and then you purchase another aircraft, and you have to go back to the FAA and add that to your CO before you can utilize that in your flight area. And these are just some of the ones I've already mentioned. You can't operate in a top-rated area. Line of sight, 400 feet is the ceiling. Has to be line of sight. Be able to fly in the area and get it out beyond the line of sight. And then we've already talked about some of the different areas where UAVs can be utilized. One of the requirements of the COA is that you have to prove to the FAA that you are a state or local government. So you'll have to get some type of documentation that proves that you're a local state government or a local agency as part of your COA. There's an online process. You go in to apply for the COA. We hear people say 60 days, but I've also heard it's taken as much as a year to do that. They've sped up the process. There's a lot of people applying for it, both in the private sector and the government sector, and the process has got more efficient, but it will take some time to go through the process to get a COA. And there's some links to all this information. And we'll post this presentation tomorrow on our webpage. If you need any of this links, you'll be able to go tomorrow and get this presentation with all the links. One of the things that Kurt helped me put this presentation, or did Kurt put the presentation together, and one of the things that I didn't know about until he showed me this presentation is this device that their FAA is going to beta test this summer. And it's an app that will be very helpful for UAVs. You go in, you can do your planning when you want to fly. It will tell you or warn you if you're within 5 miles of an airport. So it looks like a great tool to make sure that you safely fly with UAVs, make sure you don't fly in areas that you're not supposed to fly in. And these are some of the screenshots from that app. It shows you how it's going to do. So if you're interested in being a beta tester, you can contact the FAA and ask that you'd like to beta test this device. It sounds like once they go through the beta testing, then they'll come up with an Android version that will also be available. So the North Carolina legislation was enacted in the Appropriation Act last year. You see Governor McCoy signed it in August of 2014. This is the main one for state agency, local government. Before you acquire one, you have to go to the state CIO and ask for a exemption. Emergency management is in that process right now, requesting an exemption of the state CIO. And once we do that, then we'll move forward with our training and implementation of use of UAV here in North Carolina. So these are some of the general provisions for the legislation. So you can see, no person can do any of the following. Can't conduct surveillance without the person's consent, or private real property without the consent of the owner, or if you go on someone's property without the consent, that is prohibited under North Carolina law. Doesn't apply for the news gathering and events where the general public is invited. So if there's a public event where the public is invited and that news group or that TV station has required a 3-3 exemption, then they're allowed to utilize that device at that event. So these are the things that are not prohibited. So if there is a terrorist attack or some type of high risk where there's credible evidence that indicates the risk, then we're allowed to utilize UAV. Conduct surveillance in the area that's within a law enforcement claim view, and it also has a legal right to be in that area. Or if law enforcement obtains a search warrant. So in those areas, those are allowed. Again, if they come through the process, get an approval via state CIO and then FAA CIO. So these are the exceptions. Again, if there's a ongoing event where swift action is needed, someone hostage, there's imminent danger, then you're allowed to utilize that. Photographs, again, of the general public or the public is invited, or even some private things. It's a large gathering, that is not permitted. For requirement applications, one of the sensors, like I said, there's going to be a lot of sensors you're going to see. You'll be able to put on these devices. So the statute deals with infrared or thermal imaging technology. You can see that that is allowed. And you can see all the different things that possibly can be used for. Again, for ag, that's going to be a great tool to fly over your crops with the infrared or thermal imaging, because it's going to show where you have healthy crops and unhealthy crops, have too much water. So it'll be a great tool for agriculture. So if, in the statute, it says if you collect information and you collect it in violation of the law, then in that case, Unmanned says this is a $5,000 fine. Instead of fine, it's going to be where the person that's photographed may go to court and request via the court the damages of $5,000 per photo per video, plus any reasonable court costs and attorney fees. Any evidence that's collected that's not within these rules will not be miscible. So if someone collects imagery and they haven't followed all the rules, but FAA, they won't come on laws, then that information is not used in a court of law. So this is the part about the training. So they're in the statute. It requires that the Department of Aviation develop a skills and training test. And by the statute, it says that no agency state can fly without this statute, without this training test. But at the present time, the Department of Aviation hasn't developed that. And there's legislation proposed now that's going to modify that. So we'll stay tuned to see how what the final result is on this. I think more than likely it's going to end up where, and the rationale is if you go through the FAA process and FAA prove the FAA that you have the skills and ability to fly a UAV, then why do we need to take another test at the state level? So the rationale is you get approval of FAA and then at the North Carolina level, more than likely it will be something like a permit. The North Carolina Division of Aviation verifies that you've gone through the FAA process. And so this is what's in the statute to develop a commercial operation license, and that's what's presently in the rules and laws of North Carolina. More likely that will be modified some. So this is for a COA, this is the process that you need to go through to get a COA. And it starts out, we've got a lot of discussions with the folks at FAA. The thing they're looking for is, as you apply for the COA, is that you have some skills and knowledge. So that you go into that first step of training. And more than likely, they told us that once we got through the training process, they would actually probably come out and observe us flying to make sure we have proper procedures, proper skills, that we can safely fly a UAV without endangering ourselves or without endangering someone else. So there is a very good process. Education is the number one thing you need to do. So if you have someone in your agency that has a pilot's license, if you don't, you need to look at obtaining those pilot skills, at least at ground school level. Also, if there's a particular type of aircraft you want to use, go and look into what training is available to utilize it. So that you'll have, when you start applying, that FAA will look and see that you've made the effort, that you're working your way up to the level they want you to be at. And so you can see all through the process here, and the last one is obtain authorization to be able to fly with a COA. But again, here in North Carolina, first step is to get that exception from the state CIA. So, what are we doing in emergency management? Well, when probably about a year ago, we realized that UAVs can be a great benefit for emergency management for all types of applications. So the first step we did is we put together a plan of how we're going to do our education, how we're going to move forward so that we can acquire the ability to fly. We're working with NGAC. Kurt did the training over at their facility with their staff. We're also partnering with North Carolina A&T State University. North Carolina A&T State University has a geomatics program, which is surveying. And we're going to work with them to do test flights on their farm so we can utilize that to obtain good skills in collecting survey grade type applications with these devices. And that way we'll have two partners that we're working with. We're looking at courses. said, we already started our training courses. We're also looking at how we will train our staff in the use of this aircraft. So with both multi-rotor and fixed wing. Multi-rotor we see will have many applications, search and rescue, and quick deployment. We'll have quickly see, assess the situation. Train development is a great example. Before you send staff in, take that UAV, fly in, assess the situation, and then come back and then make a decision on who you're going to fly into, who you're going to go into that area, what equipment they need, how much danger you're in. So that's the process. And then we did research in other areas. You see California has developed a lot of information about UAVs, and so we're kind of using what information is out there available. We'll go to other states like Michigan, who seems to be ahead of the curve, and see what they did wrong, what they did right, and try to avoid the things that they did wrong and move in a positive direction. So as emergency management, these are all the things that we want to protect lives, property, protect the environment, and recover as quickly as possible. And so we see that a UAV has a role in all this. Maybe not a single role, but again, in conjunction with ground staff, maybe fixed wing aircraft, and also helicopters, manned helicopters. That we can use those in combination to accomplish our task here as emergency management. So these are the different areas that we deal with in emergency management, from preparedness, recovery, response. All those areas, we have specific things that we see that we can do that UAVs will have play a big role in. So as far as mitigation applications, areas that are prone to flooding, we can go in and fly before event and collect after event. That will help us maybe determine what needs to be done to keep that from happening in the future. Pre-disaster conditions along NC-12, anywhere where we are prone to have problems, we can pre-map that, and then after disaster also map it again to help analyze. Up in the mountains where we have landslides, go in, get more, with a manned aircraft, you're limited to how low you can fly and how much detail. The UAV, we can go and get more detailed information with different sensors to determine what can be done to try to avoid those applications. And forest fires, again, for fuel loads. Go in where areas that we have potential forest fires and inspect to see there's a lot of potential for a lot of fuel in there and a very serious fire. Preparedness, one of the things that in our implementation plan is once we get approval to fly UAVs, then we will incorporate that into our training. So that, well, not only can we train our staff how to use this technology, but also how to properly use it and what applications will it work best. There will probably be some applications that it may not fit. So working into our training exercises will expose that to see where we can use it, where we can't use it. Tactical responses, again, if you have an area where you need surveillance, this will be a great tool to go in, look behind the wheels, and look over areas. And high-resolution aerial photography. We're probably not far down the road. At the present time, we can put cameras on these, but there's a technology called LiDAR, light detection and ranges, which uses lasers to scan the earth. Right now, those devices, in most cases, are too big to go on a UAV. I think the latest one that's been developed weighs 9 pounds. Still pretty too large for a small UAV. At some point, that technology will be developed where we can use a LiDAR detector, LiDAR imagery on UAV, and we can go in and do scanning of small UAVs. Response, all kinds of applications here. Part of a road washes out. We want to quickly assess that, launch UAV, get our video, come back, and we'll be able to assess it. One of the vendors I saw had a device where if you have lost communications in the emergency area, they had a device that would put kind of like a small hotspot Wi-Fi, and the UAV would fly over the area, open up communications in that area by providing that. You can also do that with a tethered array. So a lot of potential applications in those areas. Geospatial records and navigation, again, to help you send it in someone into an area to fly UAV and provide them guidance into that area so they can avoid dangerous areas. And in security, or whether it's law enforcement involved, monitor the movement of people to see what types of applications, what's going on, and to keep our law enforcement safe. Response, search and rescue. One of the first ones I thought of is someone was climbing and limbering boards. And 4 years ago, there was a rescue with a National Guard helicopter. Very dangerous to fly into that area with a manned aircraft. So in those applications, someone can send in a small UAV, multi-rotor, go in, they can communicate with a person, do like Amazon, deliver something, a small package. So safety-wise, it can determine what's the best method. Is the person hurt? So you can assess the situation and then use the best resources to come in and recover. Utilities, you have power lines down, we can do a quick assessment, fly in, do videos, and see what's going on in that area. Recovery, pretty much all the same ones I've talked about, but the applications are unlimited. Once we start using this technology, we'll see more and more applications that we can use it for. The main thing is we all need to follow the rules. Because all it's going to take is one bad instance, and it's going to make it more difficult for everyone else to utilize this technology. Especially in emergency response areas, there's a lot going on. We're flying a UAV in that area. Who's controlling the airspace needs to be made aware that aircraft is in there, so that the main aircraft is aware of that. One of the developments that they are working on is a way for these UAVs can communicate not only with other UAVs, but also with manned aircraft to tell them where they're at. A couple universities are working on those type of applications so that if a UAV is in the area, it will basically send out a message to everything around it so it knows it's in that area and we can avoid problems with it. So a lot of applications. There is a process you need to go through, and if you follow that process, then this technology can have great benefits for your agency, and you'll discover all kinds of applications in there. So who in here is thinking about utilizing UAV? So how far along have you done any training or?
We just started doing research, looking at FAA, making contact with some other people, or utility companies. We were looking, we paid $500 all up for power companies to find one to look at this, see if someone go through here in Wilmington.
Right, so a multi-rotor can go up and
check and see the status, we can kind of point them in the wrong direction.
right.
We call the company, go out there and see if it's working when it's flying. So we need to investigate stage and everything.
How about in public agencies? Anybody started the process? Just follow the process. So you have NGAC. Kyle Snyder of NGAC is really a great resource. You can also contact us at Emergency Management, and we can help you with the process. Our goal in emergency management is once we get our experience, then we can help the local governments provide their expertise, provide you guidance to help you fit in on that. Pick the technology that you want to use for your application. But I think probably in 5 years, we're going to see private sector, public sectors utilize this technology a lot. I was talking to an air photography firm who, they fly and collect aerial photography for construction companies, surveyors, engineers. And in most cases, it's not cost efficient to fly 5 to 10 acres because it costs too much just to get the airplane up. You got a $2 million airplane, you got a $1 million camera. It's just not cost effective to go up and fly 5 acres, or 5 to 10 acres. And so their plan is that they will send the survey crew out, and the survey crew will launch the UAV. And while the UAV is collecting the imagery, the surveyors will do the ground control flights. Collect that information, the UAV lands, they take the information back in, and they produce the same product that they're producing with a fixed-wing manned aircraft. But their overhead is much less. They can fly at a lower level. And in my case, people have more use that.
Are there any plans that you know of for UAVs to be on state contracts so we don't have to bid them?
No, at the present time, no. But I would assume once the state CIO, we see a lot of exceptions where we see more state agencies, but that would be the first step that we'll get involved, where there's maybe a state contract or a process that where you don't have to go out and get bids. But at the present time, I'm not aware of it. So the only one I know of is NGAC, is the only a state agency that has a COA. I know the Department of Transportation is working with them. One of the areas that they see a big application is I-40, where they have a landslide in Haywood County, that you can go up and inspect. We have a lot of devices up there that they're using to stabilize the mountain. They can go in and, just like the tower infrastructure, they go in and quickly inspect that on the basis or take inventory. So I think those things will come down the road. Any other questions? Well, I hope you learned something today about UAVs. Main thing is follow the process, go through the steps that's required. If you're a public agency, COA, if you're a private agency, the 333. And thanks for your time.